What if the reason you're still stuck isn't because life is unfair, but because someone out there is simply working harder than you? Not smarter, not luckier, just harder. And the worst part? They started exactly where you are. Same doubts, same distractions, same voice in their head saying, "I'll do it tomorrow." But they didn't listen. You did. And that tiny difference? It's been compounding every single day. Think about that for a second, because deep down, you already know this feeling. You wake up with intentions. You tell yourself, today will be different. You even feel it for a moment, that spark. Then something happens. You check your phone. You delay one task. You negotiate with yourself. Just 5 more minutes. And somehow, the day is gone. Again. And it's not like you're lazy. That's the lie you've been told. You're not lazy. You're just comfortable. And comfort is dangerous, because it doesn't feel like failure. It feels like, not that bad, which is exactly why it keeps you stuck. Be honest. Does this feel familiar? Because this is where most people live their entire lives. Not failing, not winning, just existing in the middle. But here's where it gets real. There's a different type of person out there. You've seen them. Maybe you even hate them a little. They wake up early. They stay consistent. They don't complain as much. And somehow, they keep moving forward, even when they don't feel like it, especially when they don't feel like it. And you wonder, what do they have that I don't? More motivation? More discipline? More talent? No. They just made one decision you haven't made yet. They decided that excuses are expensive, and they stopped paying for them. That's it. That's the shift. But here's the part nobody tells you. That decision? It's uncomfortable. It doesn't feel inspiring. It doesn't come with a burst of energy or a perfect morning routine. It feels like resistance, like friction, like doing the thing you said you'd do when every part of you wants to avoid it. And that's exactly why most people never cross that line, because they're waiting to feel ready. Let me ask you something. Since when did progress require permission from your feelings? Seriously, think about that. Because winners don't wait to feel ready. They move anyway. And that's the gap. That invisible gap between where you are and where you want to be. It's not intelligence. It's not opportunity. It's not even time. It's action. Consistent, uncomfortable, often boring action. The kind you keep postponing. Now here's the uncomfortable truth. Every time you choose comfort over action, you're training yourself to stay average. Not once, not twice, but repeatedly, until it becomes your identity. I'm just not consistent. I'm just not disciplined. I'm just not that type of person. You ever catch yourself saying things like that? Because that's not truth. That's conditioning. And you built it. Slowly, quietly, one excuse at a time. But this is where things change. Because if you trained yourself into this pattern, you can train yourself out of it. Same brain, same habits, different standard. And this next part changes everything. Winners don't rely on motivation. They rely on standards. Let that sink in. Because motivation is fragile. It shows up when it wants. It disappears when things get hard. But standards? Standards don't care how you feel. They define what you do, no matter what. And once you raise your standards, your behavior has no choice but to follow. But here's where the resistance kicks in again. Because raising your standards means letting go of your excuses. And excuses are comfortable. They protect you. They give you a reason to stay the same. I'm too tired. I'll start tomorrow. I need more time. Sounds reasonable, right? That's why they work. But let's flip it for a second. What if someone else had your exact life? Your schedule, your responsibilities, your problems? Do you really believe they'd stay stuck too? Or would they find a way? Don't answer that too quickly. Because that question? It exposes everything. And if you're honest, you already know the truth. There is a way. There's always a way. But it requires something you've been avoiding. Ownership. Full ownership. No blaming, no waiting, no negotiating. Just responsibility. And yeah, that's heavy. Because it means where you are right now, that's on you. But here's the flip side. It also means where you go next. That's on you too. And that's power. But wait till you hear this. Because understanding this isn't enough. You can know all of this and still not change. So what actually creates the shift? What turns awareness into action? That's where everything starts to click. And once it does, you don't go back. Because here's what actually creates the shift. It's not information. You already have enough of that. It's not motivation either. You felt that before, and it didn't last. The real shift happens the moment you stop negotiating with yourself. That's it. Sounds simple, but it's not easy. Because right now your life is built on negotiations. I'll do it later. I'll start tomorrow. I deserve a break. And every time you say that, you're making a deal with your future. A bad one. Because you're trading progress for comfort. Now pause for a second. How many deals like that have you made this week? Be honest. Because this next part, this is where it gets uncomfortable. Every excuse you make feels small in the moment, but over time, they stack, quietly, until one day you look at your life and think, how did I get here? Not broken, not failed, just behind. And that's the scary part, because it doesn't feel urgent. It feels normal. Now here's the shift winners make. They stop asking, do I feel like it? And start asking, did I say I would do it? That question removes emotion. It removes mood. It removes excuses. Because now it's not about how you feel. It's about who you are. And that's where identity starts to change. But here's the part nobody warns you about. When you stop negotiating, you're going to feel resistance. A lot of it. Your brain will fight you. It'll look for shortcuts. It'll try to justify stopping. It'll say things like, this isn't sustainable. You're doing too much. You can skip today. And it will sound convincing, because it's your own voice. Now let me ask you something. Why do we trust that voice when it's been keeping us stuck? Think about that. Because that voice, it's not trying to help you grow. It's trying to keep you safe. And safe is where nothing changes. Now this next part, this is where it gets real. Winners don't silence that voice. They just stop listening to it. They hear it and move anyway. That's the difference. Not absence of doubt. Action despite it. Now imagine this. You wake up. You don't feel like working. Your mind starts its usual routine. Excuses, delays, justifications. But this time, you don't respond. You don't argue. You don't negotiate. You just act. Quietly. Immediately. And suddenly, something feels different. Not easier, but clearer. Because you removed the decision. Now here's a thought that might hit. Discipline isn't about forcing yourself. It's about removing the option not to act. Let that sink in. Because the moment something becomes non-negotiable, it stops being a struggle. It becomes who you are. Now pause. What in your life right now is truly non-negotiable? Not what you say is important, what you actually follow through on. Because that list, that's your real priority list. Everything else is just intention. Now here's where it deepens. Because once you remove negotiation in small things, it starts affecting bigger things. You stop delaying important work.
You stop avoiding uncomfortable conversations. You stop choosing distractions over growth. And slowly, you start becoming someone you trust. Now this next part, this is where everything begins to connect. Because the goal isn't to outwork everyone for a day, or a week, or when you feel motivated. The goal is to become the type of person who shows up no matter what. Quietly, consistently, without needing external pressure. And that identity? It changes everything. But here's the problem. Most people try to build that identity overnight, and that's why they fail. They go all in, burn out, fall off, start over. Sound familiar? Because this next part, this is where most people finally understand what they've been doing wrong. And once you see it, you can't unsee it.
Because the mistake is thinking this is about intensity. It's not. It's about consistency. And those are two very different things. Intensity feels powerful. You go all in, you push hard, you try to prove something to yourself, to others. But consistency? Consistency is quiet. It's repetitive. Sometimes, it's boring. And that's exactly why most people avoid it. Now think about this. Would you rather go 100% for 3 days and then stop, or go 70% every single day for months? You already know the answer. But your behavior? It probably says something different. Because intensity feels like progress, even when it's not. Now here's the shift winners make. They stop chasing intensity and start protecting consistency. Even if it's less exciting, even if no one notices, even if results don't show immediately. Because they understand something most people ignore. Consistency compounds. Every action stacks, every day builds, until one day, it looks like overnight success. But it wasn't overnight. It was just invisible for a long time. Now pause. Are you chasing quick results or building something that lasts? Be honest, because this is where most people quit. Not at the beginning, but in the middle. That awkward phase where you're putting in effort, but nothing seems to change. No big results, no recognition, no clear progress. Just work. And that's when the doubt creeps in. Is this even working? Should I try something else? Maybe this isn't for me. That moment right there, that's the test, not of your ability, but of your patience. And this is where winners separate themselves. They keep going, not because they're certain, but because they've decided quitting is no longer an option. Now let me say something that might hit hard. Most people don't fail because they're incapable. They fail because they stop too early, right before things start to shift, right before progress becomes visible, right before momentum kicks in, and they never even realize it. Now this next part, this is where things get deeper. Because staying consistent requires something most people don't develop. Emotional control. Not motivation, not hype. Control. Because there will be days you feel tired, days you feel distracted, days you feel like nothing is working. And on those days, your emotions will try to lead. But if you follow them, you lose consistency. And if you lose consistency, you lose progress. So what do winners do? They feel the same emotions, but they don't obey them. Let that sink in, because that's a skill. And like any skill, it can be trained. Now think about your last few days.
How many decisions were based on how you felt instead of what you said you'd do? Don't overthink it, because this is where change begins. Awareness. Now here's where it all connects again. Outworking everyone isn't about doing more than everyone else every single day. It's about doing what others won't do, especially when it's inconvenient, especially when it's boring, especially when there's no immediate reward. Now imagine this. Two people start at the same place, same goal, same resources. One works when they feel like it. The other works no matter what. Who wins? It's obvious, but here's the twist. Most people think they're the second person, until life tests them. Now this next part, this is where everything either locks in or falls apart. Because at some point you're going to question everything, your progress, your effort, your direction. And in that moment, you'll be tempted to go back to what's easy, back to comfort, back to excuses. And if you do, you reset everything. But if you don't, if you push through that phase, that's when your identity changes for real. And once that happens, you don't need motivation anymore. Because this is just who you are.
Because eventually, it stops feeling like effort. Not because the work gets easier, but because you get stronger. And this is the part nobody talks about. At the beginning, everything feels forced. You push yourself. You resist distractions. You fight your own habits. It's messy, uncomfortable, sometimes frustrating. But then, something shifts. Not overnight, not dramatically, just subtly. You wake up one day, and instead of debating, you just start. No internal argument, no delay, no overthinking. And that moment? That's when you realize you're not the same person anymore. Now pause. Think about that version of you, the one who doesn't hesitate, the one who follows through, the one who does what needs to be done without needing to feel ready. That version exists, not in the future, but in your choices, right now. Because identity isn't something you find, it's something you build, one action at a time. Now here's the truth that changes everything. Winners don't outwork everyone because they're obsessed with working. They outwork everyone because they stopped wasting time on things that don't matter. Let that sink in. Because most people think they need more time. They don't. They need less distraction, less hesitation, less negotiation. Now think about your day. How much of it is actually productive, and how much of it is just noise, scrolling, waiting, avoiding, starting and stopping? Be honest. Because this is where the gap really is, not in effort, but in focus. Now this next part, this is where it all becomes real. You don't need to completely transform your life tomorrow. You don't need to suddenly become perfect. You just need to make one decision, a real one, the kind that doesn't depend on how you feel, the kind that doesn't disappear after a bad day. A standard, something you don't break, no matter what. Now let me ask you something. What's one thing you know you should be doing, but keep avoiding? Don't say it out loud, just think it. Because that thing, that's your starting point. Not 10 habits, not a complete life overhaul, just that one thing, done consistently. Now here's where most people hesitate again. They think, is that enough? And the answer is yes.
Because consistency in one area spills into others. It builds confidence. It builds momentum. It builds identity. And once that starts, everything else becomes easier to fix. Now imagine this. A few weeks from now, you've been showing up, not perfectly, but consistently. You've kept that one standard, every day, no excuses. And slowly, your mindset shifts. You stop seeing yourself as someone who tries. You start seeing yourself as someone who does. And that changes everything. Because once you believe that, your actions follow. Now here's a quiet truth. Most people never reach their potential, not because they lack ability, but because they never fully commit. They stay in the middle, trying, but not fully, working, but not consistently, wanting, but not deciding. Don't be that person. Now this next thought, this is where everything comes together. You don't need to beat everyone else. You don't need to compete with the world. You just need to stop losing to yourself. Every day, every decision. Every moment you choose action over excuse, you win. And those wins, they add up. Until one day, you look back and realize you're no longer the person who made excuses. You're the one who outworked them. Quietly, consistently, relentlessly. Now take a second. Don't rush this. Which version of you are you choosing? The one who waits or the one who moves? Because that choice, it's not made once. It's made daily. And it starts the moment this ends. So if this hits something real, don't ignore it. Don't let it be just another video you felt motivated by and forgot tomorrow. Do something small, something real, something consistent. Because that's how this begins. And if you're ready to stop making excuses and start becoming the version of you that actually follows through, stay with this. Subscribe and keep building a life you don't need to escape from.